The porcelain cup never wavered as Delphine poured, her dark hands steady despite the tremor she felt deep in her chest. Steam rose between them like a veil, obscuring Judge Weston Aldridge's pale face for just a moment she used to compose herself. "Perfect as always, Delphine," he murmured, not looking up from the morning paper. The headlines screamed about another corruption scandal in the district attorney's office. He chuckled. Vultures, all of them. She stood at attention beside the breakfast table, her black uniform crisp, her expression carefully blank. 23 years she'd served this house. 23 years of yes, sir, and right away, sir, and swallowing everything else down where it festered. The study door was open. She could see his desk from here, the mahogany monstrosity where he signed his rulings, where he'd signed so many things. "Will you need the car today, sir?" Her voice was soft, practiced. "No, light schedule, just some old paperwork to review." He sipped his coffee, savored it. "Mrs. Aldridge still at her sister?" "Yes, sir. She'll return Sunday." 3 more days. 3 more days of the house being just the two of them, the silence broken only by the tick of the grandfather clock and the scratch of his pen. He turned the page. She saw his eyes scan an article about a woman released from prison after 30 years, wrongfully convicted. His expression never changed. Delphine's hand went to her pocket, felt the folded paper there. The paper she'd carried for 6 months, ever since the lawyer had pressed it into her palm at the grocery store. "When you're ready," the woman had whispered. "Just when you're ready." "Delphine, more coffee." She lifted the pot again, poured again. Some spilled onto the saucer. Weston looked up, surprised. In 23 years, she'd never spilled. "Forgive me, sir." He studied her for a moment, then waved dismissively. "You're getting old, we both are." He returned to his paper. "Clean it up." Old, yes. 62 now. She'd been 39 when she'd started here, desperate for work, willing to be invisible, young enough to believe that justice was blind. Old enough now to know it was only blind to certain people. She dabbed the saucer with a cloth napkin, the paper in her pocket burning against her hip like a coal. Not yet. The timing had to be perfect. The lawyer had been very clear about that. "Will there be anything else, sir?" "No, you may go." She nodded, collected the silver coffee pot, and walked toward the kitchen. Behind her, she heard him settle deeper into his chair with a satisfied sigh. In the kitchen, Delphine set down the pot with shaking hands. The morning sun slanted through the window, illuminating the photograph on the counter, the one she kept turned face down when the judge was near. She turned it over now. Marcus, her son, 22 years old in that picture, his whole life ahead of him, the last photo before the arrest. Before Judge, Weston Aldridge sentenced him to 40 years for a robbery he didn't commit. Before the drugs they planted were discovered in his cell. Before the heart attack at 31 that the prison doctor said was genetic, that she knew was despair. She touched his face through the glass. "Soon," she whispered. "Soon." The floorboards creaked above her head. The judge was moving to his study. Delphine reached for her phone, typed a single word. "Today." The response was immediate. "We're ready." The doorbell rang at precisely 10 o'clock. Delphine opened it to find a woman in an expensive charcoal suit, carrying a leather briefcase. Behind her stood a man with a camera bag. "Judge Aldridge?" the woman asked, though she was looking directly at Delphine. "In his study. May I say who's calling?" "Vera Heitwer, State Bar Association. We have an appointment." They didn't. Delphine knew the judge's calendar by heart, but she stepped aside anyway, showed them in. "Wait here, please." She climbed the stairs, knocked on the study door. "What is it?" Irritation in his voice. He hated interruptions. "A Ms. Heitwer from the State Bar Association, sir. She says you have an appointment." A pause. "I don't have sent her away." "She seems quite insistent, sir. She has a photographer with her." Another pause, longer this time. The judge understood optics. Understood that turning away the bar association looked like you had something to hide. "Fine, 5 minutes, show them up." Delphine descended, led the visitors upstairs. Vera Heitwer's eyes met hers for just a second, a flash of understanding passing between them. She knocked again. "Your visitors, sir." "Come in." Delphine opened the door, stepped aside. Vera entered first, hand extended. "Judge Aldridge, thank you for seeing us. I apologize for the confusion about the appointment. My office must have failed to confirm." He half rose, shook her hand warily. "What's this about, Miss Heitwer?" "A routine review. We're interviewing retired judges about their most memorable cases for the association's centennial publication." Her smile was professional, warm even. "We'd love to include your perspective." His vanity won. Delphine could see it happen, the way his chest puffed slightly, the way he gestured to the chairs. "I see. Well, I suppose I can spare a few minutes." "Wonderful. Thomas, set up there by the window, the light's better." She turned to Delphine. "Would you mind bringing us some coffee?" "Of course, ma'am." Delphine descended to the kitchen, her heart hammering. This was it, the first phase. She prepared a fresh pot, hands steadier now that things were in motion, arranged cups on the silver tray. Upstairs, she could hear the rumble of the judge's voice, the click of the camera. She carried the tray up, knocked softly. "Come." Inside, the photographer had positioned Weston at his desk, the morning light making him look almost noble. Vera sat across from him, a recording device on the desk between them. "Most challenging aspect of the bench is maintaining objectivity," he was saying. "You must remember that everyone deserves a fair hearing, regardless of their—" "Coffee, sir." "Ah, yes, just set it down, Delphine." She did, her eyes catching on the open file on his desk. She couldn't see the name, but she saw the date, March 2007, the month of Marcus's trial. Vera was watching her. "Your maid seems very attentive." 23 years of service, knows this house better than I do," he chuckled. "Don't you, Delphine?" "Yes, sir." "That's quite a tenure," Vera said. "You must have seen a lot, all these years, all these cases coming through." Something in her tone made Delphine look up, made the judge look up too. "I'm sorry, what does my domestic staff have to do with?" "Nothing at all, just making conversation." Vera's smile never wavered. "Now, Judge Aldridge, I'm curious about your conviction rate, particularly in cases involving—" "Before we continue," he interrupted, "I'd like to see your credentials." Vera reached into her briefcase, produced a card. He studied it, frowned. "This says you're with the Civil Rights Advocacy Center, not the State Bar Association." "I said I was from the State Bar. I never said I was asterisk with asterisk them. I said we were interviewing judges, which we are." She leaned forward. "Specifically, judges with unusually high conviction rates in cases involving Black defendants." The room went very cold. "Get out of my house." "We're on the record, Judge Aldridge. The camera's been running the whole time. Would you like to comment on the Marcus Trent case?" Delphine's breath caught. She saw the judge's face go white, then red. "I said get out." "Mrs. Delphine Trent," Vera continued calmly, "who has served your household for 23 years, is the mother of Marcus Trent, convicted in your court of armed robbery in 2007 and sentenced to 40 years despite significant evidence tampering. He died in prison in 2016. Would you care to explain why you never recused yourself from cases involving your employees' family members?" Weston stood, shaking. "This is entrapment. This is Delphine, did you?" Delphine stepped forward, her hand going to her pocket. She pulled out the paper, unfolded it. "This," she said, her voice stronger than she'd heard it in years, "is a warrant for your arrest, signed by Judge Helena Marks, for judicial misconduct, conspiracy to violate civil rights, and obstruction of justice." She set it on his desk, on top of the file from March 2007. "The coffee you've been drinking every morning for the past 6 months was poured by the same hand that signed the affidavit that started the investigation into your conduct. I've been recording every conversation we've had, every story you've told about cleaning up the streets, every joke about defense attorneys, every slip." His mouth opened and closed, soundless. "The police are downstairs," Vera said. They've been outside for the past hour. Shall we? Detective Raymond Carr stood in the foyer, his badge already in hand when Delphine descended the stairs. Behind him, 2 uniformed officers waited, patient as stone. Mrs. Trent. Raymond nodded to her with respect she hadn't seen from a police officer in decades. Is he cooperative? He's in shock, I think. That'll pass. Raymond started up the stairs, then paused. You did good, real good. Upstairs, voices rose. Weston's indignant, demanding his lawyer, invoking his rights. The same rights he'd watched others fumble with, confused and afraid before crushing them. Delphine moved to the kitchen window, looked out at the growing crowd. 3 news vans now, cameras pointing at the house like cannons. Word traveled fast when a judge was arrested. Her phone buzzed. A text from her daughter, Simone. Mom, it's on the news. Are you okay? She typed back, I'm fine, baby, it's over now. But it wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. The file boxes came down first, carried by junior officers wearing latex gloves. Decades of cases, decades of decisions. Raymond had explained it to her months ago. We need cause, probable cause, and we need it airtight because he'll have the best lawyers money can buy. So Delphine had listened, had remembered, had waited for the moments when Weston felt safe, when the Bourbon had loosened his tongue, when he'd talk about the cases that haunted him, not because he regretted them, but because they'd been close calls, could have gone wrong. That Trent boy, he'd said one night, 3 months ago, standing in this very kitchen while she made his nightcap. Almost derailed the whole operation. If his mother had been smart enough to hire a real lawyer instead of that public defender hack, they might have noticed the chain of custody problems. She kept her face neutral, her hand steady. What happened to him, sir? Died in prison, heart attack, he'd shrugged. They never last long, that type. She recorded every word. Now Vera descended, found Delphine by the window. They're taking him downtown. You don't have to watch if you don't want to. I want to. They emerged through the front door, Weston in handcuffs, his face no longer red but ashen gray, Raymond's hand on his elbow. The cameras erupted in flashes and shouted questions. Judge Aldridge, did you take bribes? Is it true you falsified evidence? How many wrongful convictions? Raymond guided him to the car, placed a hand on his head as he ducked into the backseat. Standard procedure. Delphine had seen it done to Marcus, remembered the way her son had looked back at her through the window, confused and terrified. Weston didn't look back. The car pulled away, the news vans followed, and then, slowly, the street emptied. Vera touched her shoulder. There's more, you should know. They went to the study. It was destroyed now, drawers open, files scattered, the computer tower removed. On the desk lay a ledger, old-fashioned, handwritten. We found this in his safe. He kept records, payments, dates, case numbers. Vera's voice was quiet. Delphine, we think there are at least 40 other cases like Marcus, probably more. 40 families, 40 sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, 40 lives destroyed. Can they be freed? The ones still alive, we're already filing motions, but it'll take time. The system moves slow, even when it's fixing its own mistakes. Delphine sat in Weston's chair, looked at the desk where he'd signed her son's death warrant, where he'd signed 40 others. I have something else, she said. Wait here. She went to her room, the small maid's quarters off the kitchen that had been her world for 23 years. Reached under the mattress, pulled out the journal. She started it the week after Marcus died. Every conversation, every odd visitor, every phone call she'd overheard. Detective names, prosecutor names, defense attorneys who seemed to lose every case they brought to Weston's court. She handed it to Vera. Sweet Jesus, Vera breathed, flipping through pages. You documented everything. I didn't know what would matter, so I wrote it all. This matters, all of it matters. Vera looked up. Why did you wait so long? Delphine was quiet for a moment. I didn't know who to trust. Everyone said the system worked, that Marcus got a fair trial, that I should accept it and move on. She touched the journal. It took me years to understand that the system was never broken. It was doing exactly what it was designed to do. And then I met you. At the grocery store, remember? You were buying flowers, talking on your phone about a case. I heard you say a judge's name, not Weston, another one, and the word corrupt. I followed you to your car. She smiled slightly. Scared you half to death. You did, Vera agreed. But you also saved 40 lives, maybe more. The trial didn't start for 14 months. In that time, Delphine's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. The story went viral, just as the young lawyer had predicted. Black Maid brings down corrupt judge ran the headlines. Her face was everywhere. Some called her a hero, others called her a traitor. She received death threats and marriage proposals, donations and doxing attempts. Through it all, she'd stayed in the house, Weston's house, now frozen as evidence, but where she still had legal right to remain as a sitting tenant. Mrs. Aldridge had filed for divorce within a week. I didn't know, she'd told the press, and maybe that was true. Maybe you could live with someone for 40 years and never really see them. Delphine understood. She'd done the same thing in reverse. Now she stood outside the courthouse, Vera beside her, preparing to testify. The building was surrounded by protesters, both sides, separated by barricades and police. On one side, families of the wrongfully convicted, holding photos of their loved ones. On the other, Weston's supporters, waving thin blue line flags and signs about law and order. Ready? Vera asked. No, but I'm going anyway. The courtroom was packed. Delphine took her seat in the witness box, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, as if she'd ever stopped. The prosecutor was a woman named Iris Longwood, young enough to be Delphine's granddaughter, fierce enough to terrify her. Mrs. Trent, how long did you work for Judge Aldridge? 23 years, ma'am. And during that time, did he ever discuss his cases with you? Yes, ma'am, often. Weston's lawyer objected. Hearsay. Your Honor, Iris countered. Mrs. Trent's testimony goes to the defendant's state of mind and knowledge of his own misconduct. The judge, a black woman named Helena Marks, the same one who'd signed Weston's arrest warrant, nodded. I'll allow it. Continue. For 3 hours, Delphine testified. About the conversations. The visitors who came late at night. The prosecutor who'd left an envelope of cash on the hall table, thinking she was asleep. The defense attorney who'd called, drunk, begging Weston to go easy on the kid. He's only 19. And what did Judge Aldridge say? Iris asked. He said, they're all only 19 once. Then they're career criminals. Better to put them away early. She testified about the ledger, the names she recognized, the amounts that increased over the years. About the day Weston had laughed while reading about a prisoner who'd died, a man whose case he'd heard, whose conviction he'd upheld on appeal despite obvious problems. Did the judge ever express remorse? Iris asked. No, ma'am. He called it keeping the streets clean. During cross-examination, Weston's attorney tried to rattle her. Mrs. Trent, isn't it true that you held a grudge against Judge Aldridge because of your son's conviction? Yes, sir. I held a grudge. My son died in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And isn't it possible that this grudge colored your interpretation of innocent conversations? No, sir. I have recordings. Illegally obtained recordings. Obtained in my own home, where I had every right to be and to record. Your client told me his secrets because he thought I was too old, too invisible, too powerless to do anything about them. He was wrong. The gallery erupted. Judge Marks gavelled for order. When Delphine stepped down, she passed Weston at the defense table. He looked smaller now, diminished. Their eyes met. She waited for satisfaction, for triumph, felt only a deep, aching tiredness. Outside, the families mobbed her. A woman grabbed her hands, crying. My brother, they're reviewing his case. He might come home. My son got out last week, another said. 20 years he was in there, 20 years because of that man. An older woman, grandmother-aged, pressed a photograph into her palm. This was my baby, died in there before they could review his case. But he'd want me to thank you. To tell you that you brought the light in." Delphine held the photo, studied the young face. Another Marcus. Another life stolen. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "Don't be sorry, be proud. You did what none of us could." The verdict came on a Tuesday morning, 18 months after Delphine had poured that first intentionally spilled coffee. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for a month later. Weston faced up to 40 years, the same sentence he'd given Marcus. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. But Delphine wasn't in the courthouse when the verdict was read. She was somewhere else entirely. The prison visiting room smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. She'd been to one like it 100 times before visiting Marcus. Hated every second of it then. Hated it now. But this was different. The man who sat down across from her was younger than Marcus would have been if he'd lived. 32, maybe 33. His eyes were cautious, disbelieving. "Mrs. Trent." "Caleb." He nodded. "They said I might get out because of you, because of what you did." Caleb Morrison, convicted at 19 of assault he didn't commit. 14 years in, 26 more to go. Until Vera's team had reviewed his case, found the same pattern of evidence tampering, the same prosecutor who'd worked with Weston. "The motion's been filed," Delphine said. "Judge Marks is reviewing it personally. Vera thinks you'll be home by Christmas." He put his face in his hands and wept. They talked for an hour. About his mother, who died while he was inside. About the education he'd gotten in prison, the degree in engineering he'd earned through correspondence courses. About his fear of the outside world, whether anyone would hire him, whether he'd even know how to be free. "You'll figure it out," Delphine said. "And you won't be alone. We're building a network, all of us. The families, the exonerated, the ones still fighting. We're going to help each other." When visiting hours ended, Caleb stood, hesitated. "Mrs. Trent, your son Marcus, what was he like?" She smiled, the first real smile in years. "He was kind. Used to rescue stray cats, drive me crazy bringing them home. Wanted to be a teacher. History. Said he wanted to help kids understand where they came from so they'd know where they could go." "He sounds amazing." He was. "I'm sorry you lost him. I'm sorry we all lost him." "Me too, baby. Me too." 3 months later, Delphine stood in her new kitchen, not Weston's house, but a small place of her own that Vera had helped her find. The book deal and speaking fees had given her enough to retire, to live comfortably, to fund the scholarship she'd started in Marcus's name. The coffee pot percolated on the counter. She poured herself a cup, sat at the small table, looked out at the morning. Her phone buzzed. A text from Caleb, first day at work. "Wish me luck." She typed back, "You don't need luck. You've got skill and heart, that's better." Another text, this one from Simone. "Mom, the documentary crew wants to know if you're free next Tuesday for more filming." More filming, more interviews, more people wanting her story, her pain, her triumph packaged into digestible segments. She was tired of telling it, but she understood why it mattered. Because for every person who heard it, there might be one other Delphine out there, carrying her own secrets, thinking she was powerless. And maybe that person would learn that invisibility could be a weapon, that patience could be a plan, that justice delayed didn't have to mean justice denied forever. The doorbell rang. She opened it to find Vera holding a box. "More files?" Delphine asked. "The last of them, from the appeals court. They're moving forward on 23 more cases." Vera set the box down, accepted the coffee Delphine offered. "You know what this means. When it's all said and done, you'll have freed more innocent people than almost anyone in modern history." "I didn't free them. The truth freed them. I just held the door open." "You did more than that. You burned down the whole damn house to find the key." They drank their coffee in comfortable silence. Outside, a car pulled up. More visitors, there were always more visitors now. Families wanting to thank her. Lawyers wanting her help. Journalists wanting her story. Delphine set down her cup, prepared to open the door again. But first, she looked at the photograph on her mantle. Marcus, 22 and smiling, his whole stolen future in his eyes. "We did it, baby," she whispered. "Not just for you, for all of them." The doorbell rang again. She took a breath, straightened her shoulders, and went to answer it. There was still work to do. There would always be work to do. But for the first time in 23 years, when Delphine poured the coffee, her hands didn't shake at all. Judge Weston Aldridge was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison. He served 3 years before dying of a stroke at the age of 71. 73 cases were overturned based on evidence from his trial, with 61 individuals released or granted new trials. The Aldridge house was sold, with proceeds divided among the wrongfully convicted. Delphine Trent continued her advocacy work until her death at 84, surrounded by her family and dozens of the people she'd helped free. At her funeral, they formed an honor guard, each holding a candle. The light stretched for blocks,